Transportation planning helps shape our community's economic health and quality of life. Transportation planning is more than listing highway and transit projects. It requires developing strategies to meet the area's long-term goals and requires transportation planners to involve stakeholders throughout the process. Federal regulations require state departments of transportation, called DOTs, and metropolitan planning organizations, known as MPOs, to conduct statewide and metropolitan transportation planning. Agencies coordinate public involvement and input by using a cooperative, continuing, and comprehensive planning model. This joint effort, known as the 3C process, results in defining common ground about what the transportation system should be and developing solutions to meet that vision. Public agencies at different levels of government conduct transportation planning to improve transportation systems. State DOTs are the largest units of government that develop transportation plans and projects. They set transportation goals for the state and oversee the safe operation of the transportation system. State DOTs also plan the safe and efficient transportation of people and goods among the states, cities, towns, and neighboring states. State DOTs develop a statewide transportation plan by working with other transportation organizations, local governments, and interested parties to consider stakeholder needs. MPOs are created to carry out transportation planning in urban areas. An MPO works in cooperation with state and local agencies to develop an area's transportation system. MPOs seek public involvement, and the public and interested stakeholders influence the MPO's direction and approach. MPOs assess regional travel for transit and highways. At the local level, local governments carry out many transportation planning functions, such as scheduling improvements and maintenance for local streets and roads. Local governments and transit agencies also generate project proposals and take them to the MPO and the state. Public transportation or transit agencies also play a crucial role in the planning activities of the MPO. Public transportation agencies may provide services using buses, various rail options, or ferry boats to support needs and solutions identified through the planning process. The last key participant is the federal government. The U.S. Department of Transportation oversees the planning and project activities of the MPOs, the state DOTs, and transit agencies. The department provides advice and training on transportation topics ranging from project finance to the efficient design and operation of highway systems. The department provides funding for transportation planning and projects and approves the state's list of projects known as the State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP. Before transportation planners start their work, stakeholders should have a long-term transportation vision. A vision sets broad goals for what the region or state will look like and reflects what is important for the future. Transportation planners help the public and elected officials translate the vision into long-range transportation plans, or LRTPs. Long-range plans outline transportation solutions that cover 20 or more years. In developing these plans, planners evaluate transportation alternatives. The public and other agencies also weigh in to select alternatives that work best for an area and use funds effectively. After a region or state develops a long-range transportation plan, the MPO and state DOT develop their own short-term transportation improvement program, or TIP. These programs identify all highway, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian projects proposed within a metropolitan area. The MPO and state DOT update the programs at least once every 4 years. The STIP and TIP are a 4-year list of projects proposed for federal funding and must include a reasonable cost estimate for each project. The comprehensive STIP compiles all the MPO TIPs for metropolitan areas and adds all projects in non-metropolitan areas. Transportation planning plays a fundamental role in a community's vision for its future. Your involvement throughout the process is a key component for what we want our communities to be. Go to public meetings, express your opinion about a proposed project, or volunteer for a transportation advisory committee. To find out how to get involved, contact your local transportation planning organization, your state DOT, or the FHWA division office in your state.
Good morning, everyone. Just a few housekeeping before we do any sort of an introduction. We'll call the meeting to order, and I believe we have a quorum. So with that, Mayor Bryant is going to come up and lead us in the pledge.
Would y'all bow your heads, please? Heavenly Father, we give thanks for our many blessings and ask for your guidance, strength, and wisdom as we meet today, that we might best serve our communities and beyond. We ask that all interaction and discussion be conducted with the utmost civility and respect for each other. We pray for the safekeeping of our protectors and first responders, both home and abroad. Also, we pray for our leaders at all levels of government. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Amen. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Commissioner Alan Mayo from Sarasota County, and I'm currently the chair of the Sarasota-Manatee MPO. On behalf of all of us on the MPO, I want to thank you for attending today's workshop and to learn more about the MPO's long-range transportation planning process. We have, in addition to all the electeds that are on our board, we have over 100 people that have signed up and sent in an RSVP. I especially want to recognize a few elected officials in addition to our board members who have joined us today, even though they're not on the board. We appreciate your participation and interest in transportation. We have Bradenton Councilman Bill Sanders is here, as well as Vice Mayor Debbie McDowell and Commissioner Jill Luke from Northport, in addition to the electeds on our board member. Today's workshop will be different from a regular board meeting. I see a lot of familiar faces, so this will be different today. We have just one agenda item, the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan, the LRTP, and the board will take no action today, although I promise you the morning will be very active. If you look at the agenda on page 4 of your workbook, you will see that we have over 20 presentations, and the MPO staff has promised me that we will adjourn in time for lunch. The current chairman is kind of mean, and I usually have to stop speakers, but we have a different way of doing it today because they didn't want me to embarrass myself in front of 125 people. Each presenter, and this is the important part, folks, please, each presenter has a specific time limit, and we will give them a 1-minute yield the floor warning. There's a demonstration. And a big stop sign when they are out of time. You will notice that we have 2 podiums, so when one speaker stops, the next one will be ready to go on the opposite side of the stage. So that cuts down and all that back and forth. We plan to go straight through the agenda with no breaks, so feel free to get up, stretch your legs, get a cup of coffee when you need to, and that's all in the back corridor. Notice that our board members do not have any microphones. They're gonna love me for that one. Although the board won't be asking questions or hearing verbal public comments during the program, there will be an opportunity for interactive public response at the end of the meeting, when board members and all guests will be asked to work together to identify priorities for consideration in the long-range planning process. You have an evaluation form to provide written comments that will be compiled and made a part of the record. The information gathered here today will be the foundation of the future scenarios we will see next fall. We hope you will come back then to see the results of today's program. Let's get started with our first report, and that's Florida Department of Transportation, District 1 Secretary L.K. Nandon.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good morning. So I get a call from Dave Friday, and he asked me to make some remarks. And I said, Dave, really, you want me to make remarks? Because my background is in operations, and he's asking me to make remarks about the long-range transportation planning process. Operations and planning, they don't go well together, right, Commissioner? So all kidding aside, right, first of all, I want to commend Sarasota-Manatee MPO staff, because this long-range transportation planning process needs to be a collaborative process. And his staff, Dave and his staff, have done a great job setting the stage so that we build the right foundation for the growth of this region. Proper planning sets the right foundation. So it's very exciting to talk about the future of this region as we go through this long-range transportation planning process. I want to touch a couple of points about the priorities that Governor DeSantis set for us. So when Governor DeSantis came on board, one of the top priorities was to create a transportation system that has a high emphasis on creating that safe and efficient system that is going to serve the citizens of Florida and all the visitors that come to the state of Florida. He set 3 priorities for Department of Transportation: safety, congestion mitigation, and technology. The first 2 items, safety and congestion mitigation, are about quality of life. We want to have a safe system, and we want to have a congestion-free system so that our citizens and visitors experience the best transportation system in the country and in the world. Technology is where we leverage what's available to us so we can provide that efficient system from concept to concrete. So he asked us to focus on those 3 priorities, and that's what we are going to do at the Department of Transportation. Now, if you talk about safety, we want to make a difference for all modes, for every user on our system. And you can do that only if we integrate transportation with land use. Very, very important point. Critical point, because if transportation is on one side and land use on one side and they are not integrated, we're not providing and serving our citizens the right way. So we got to focus on that. And that's what long-range transportation planning is about. We need to set the right foundation by integrating transportation with land use. Sarasota-Manatee, as you guys are aware, is growing pretty fast. As of all of our state of Florida, a lot of people are moving into this region. Now think about it. If we have a lot of people moving into this region, we got challenges, right? Challenges like getting off the map as the top unsafe area for our vulnerable road users, our bike-ped commuters. Land use decisions are very critical. So as we go through this long-range transportation planning process, every community that's involved in this process, take back and use this long-range transportation plan to look at land use planning that is going to focus on providing that safe environment for our citizens. We all need to be engaged, and the department is going to be engaged. That's the reason why we created our planning studio. The planning studio office is created so that we engage with the right customers at the right level. That means we are going to be engaged with the planning folks in each of the local partners so that we integrate transportation with land use. Our Secretary Thibault, when he came on board, he said, the biggest priority as we deliver Governor DeSantis' vision is to ensure that we collaborate and partner with our local partners. And that's what we're going to do. I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for your time, and looking forward to the success of our region.
Thank you, Secretary Nandum. Good morning, Chairman Mayo and board members and members of the public. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the long-range plan process. I have about 20 minutes worth of notes and about 5 minutes to deliver them in, so I will be editing, because I'm not going to be the one who gets that stop sign. First of all, why do we do an LRTP, and what is it? It's our multimodal plan that takes us 20 to 25 years out into the future. You know, the first 5 years is covered by our TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, and the state's work program, and the next few years after that are covered in our long-range transportation plan. There's a financial feasibility requirement. And in fact, the whole long-range transportation plan is a federal requirement. That's one of the main reasons we do it, in order to be eligible to receive federal funds in our metropolitan area. The plans are updated every 5 years, and the federal funds are limited to projects that are in our long-range transportation plan. Now, there are some caveats to that, but basically the big projects have to be in the LRTP in order to receive federal funds. And let's see if we can advance the slide. It's on here somewhere. That one, okay, thank you. And thank you. So our process begins with an analysis of existing conditions, and we also forecast population growth. You have some of this material in the workbook today. We had a presentation at our last MPO board meeting that covered the gist of the regional conditions, existing conditions, and projected growth, so that we look out into the future and try to determine, okay, based on what we have planned and in the works, what's funded, what's in our current plan, and the projected growth and where it's going to be, what's it going to look like 25 years from now, 20 years from now, and what new investments are needed, what additional investments are needed or would be desirable. And then we have to figure out what we could afford, what's actually feasible. And all of this is done in a collaborative manner, lots of public involvement, and we do actual computer modeling of where this growth is going to occur, and lots of opportunities for the private sector to participate and individuals to participate. And then the elected officials on the MPO board, as part of our regional collaborative process, develop the actual final long-range plan. And that will include, it takes about 1.5 years to do that. So by this time next year, we'll have a kind of a rough first draft of what the LRTP is actually going to look like. Oh, thanks. So this time around, we have some new planning emphasis areas that the Florida Department of Transportation has asked MPOs to incorporate, and these are consistent with the state transportation plan and federal transportation planning requirements that we operate under. First of those is that we consider our rural transportation issues in surrounding areas and our connectivity to the rural areas around us, as well as the urbanized areas around us. The second is we must consider emerging technologies, what are called the ACEs, or the Automated and Connected Vehicles, Electric and Shared Use Vehicles, and how are these new technologies and changes, which are happening faster than ever, and how are they going to affect our future, and how can we incorporate them in our planning process? And we also must practice performance-based planning, which means implementing the performance measure requirements that the federal government passed about 1 year ago. Performance-based planning is done in many ways, but we do it with data. And as you go through today, you're going to hear about some of the data and measures that have been developed to comply with the federal requirements that tell us what's working and what isn't. As a second, and so we do this at the project level and the system level. And it introduces accountability into the process that, because we update every 5 years, there's course corrections as needed along the way. Some of the issues that must be addressed, because federal money must go to address these issues, are safety, security, and preparedness, bridges, infrastructure and resiliency, mobility, congestion, reliability, technology, autonomy, economy, tourism and freight, the equity and livability of our communities, and environmental and conservation issues. So as you go through today, use your workbook. It tells you what some of the details of these requirements are, and we really appreciate your participation, and I thank the board for paying attention to the planning issues that all of the neighboring jurisdictions are facing, that you'll hear about today.
Thank you, Dave. As you mentioned up on the screen here, these are some of our focus areas. So for the 2045 LRTP, these are the focus areas we want to address. So I'm going to get up here and just briefly touch on mobility, congestion, reliability, as well as technology and autonomy. If we went out and asked pretty much anyone in the public what is their day-to-day greatest concern, they'd probably tell us congestion. What are you doing about congestion? How do we leverage the resources that we currently have to better address that? The MPO is in the process of completing their congestion management process update. We're probably about a month out from completion. Some of the work that we've done thus far to get us to this point is highlighting major corridors, as you can see, in identifying unreliable segments throughout the region. As an add-on, we're also adding in an ATMS, which means advanced traffic management systems proportion to that as well, that looks at the infrastructure and technology needed to help advance DOTs as well as the federal government's goals of autonomous, connected, electric, shared use vehicles, as well as providing all the technology needed to better utilize the resources that we have in the field right now and allow ourselves to move into the future. With that, allow me to introduce Bob McQueen, as he's going to talk about smart cities and how these interact with the requirements that we have with the state and the federal government. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to commend the MPO and the staff for the friendly and professional way in which they worked with me to coordinate. Really great job. You probably figured out by now I come from Scotland, which means I've had to learn to speak slowly and probably lose some of the vocabulary completely. I try to say y'all and folks a lot, but it doesn't fool anybody. In fact, I've learned if you're nodding and smiling, you don't know what I'm saying at all. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is I'm talking about smart cities and a little bit about technology. And you're probably wondering, why do I have a man with a stick on the front of my slide? Well, one of the challenges we have in smart cities is, what is a smart city? So I've defined my own definition, which is, you live in a smart city or a smart community or a smart region if you poke it with a stick and it reacts appropriately. Now, there's some sense behind that rather flippant definition. What it means is a smart community should have the ability to sense. It should be able to look for threats, opportunities, prevailing transportation conditions, and fluctuations in the demand for transportation. Secondly, it should have the intelligence to react appropriately based on that information. So that's why I use the man with a stick analogy. I worked for 3M a number of years ago in the UK, and they taught me that if you're trying to sell something, you've got to go through what they call AIDA, A-I-D-A, which is awareness, interest, desire, and action. My job here today is awareness. I would love if you get interested to come back and spend more time talking about more detail to get you really interested in smart cities and transportation technology. Did I go the right way? There we go. So what exactly is a smart city? You kind of covered that. It means different things to different people. It's smart healthcare, it's smart education, smart factories, a combination of things, but I'm going to focus on transportation and mobility. Why? Because there's no point in having smart factories and smart healthcare if you can't get to them. So accessibility is a key. So one of the keys that we're aiming for in smart cities is increased accessibility and increased mobility. Now, I use those two terms separately, and again, these are my definitions. Mobility means the ability to make more trips to get to where you want to go. Accessibility is how easy or how difficult is it to get there. So I have a focus on accessibility. How easy can we make it for people to get from point A to point B for different trip purposes like healthcare, education, employment. Now, LK mentioned the relationship between transportation and land use. It's a big relationship. Depending on what you use the land for, changes how many people want to go there and how many people come back out of there. We call it attraction and generation, trip generation. This is a very high-level summary of what I would call accessibility and mobility services within a smart city. I'm focusing on services because services deliver value in terms of safety, efficiency, user experience. Definitely we need programs and projects in order to monitor and manage our progress, but these all result in the delivery of services. And number 7 includes land use analytics. Right now we do a lot of lookup, we make a lot of averaging, we make a lot of high-level assumptions about land use, but with the data that's coming available, we should be able to be much better at figuring out what exactly each land use will do to transportation and vice versa. There's a lot of concern around the globe about land use and transportation. In fact, in some areas, they're looking at the relationship between better accessibility and the value of the land. Some areas around the globe have even looked at taxation based on the value of the land, based on accessibility and mobility. As we talk about big data and smart data management, I expect 2 things to happen. I expect there's going to be a wow moment and a whoops moment. The wow moment is when we realize, hey, we didn't know these things were connected. We didn't know if people do that, they also do this. The whoops moment, which is not the end of the world, is when you realize that your new data and your new information has given you insight that you have a problem, you have a deficiency in transportation service that you didn't previously understand. Now, the rational approach to that is to put a plan together to address the deficiency, get a budget together, and now you're in the business of results-driven investment planning, where your investments are based on outcomes and not index-linked to the previous year's budget. Now, of course, being a technology-type presentation, I've got to show you a picture of a cloud. And all this basically shows is that data comes in from multiple sources, not just the traditional sources, but maybe movement analytics from cell phones, anonymized, of course, credit card transaction data, energy data, because we're starting to understand there's a relationship between peak energy in the morning and peak travel. You get up, you make breakfast, get the kids out, use a lot of electricity, then get in the car and drive, or hopefully get in transit and travel. So what this slide just shows is, here's how you take all the data in. We have cloud-based technologies now that are very, very good at manipulating big data. In times gone by, we'd have to split the data up and partition it because of the limitations of our technology. Now you keep it in, this is a technical term, you keep it in a blob. You keep it in one place, which gives you a view right across the data, and that's when you see things you've never seen before. I mentioned movement analytics. I mentioned credit card data. There's concern about privacy. So my concern with smart data management is that we have smart data governance as well. In fact, we probably need the data governance before we go too far with the data. Why? To be honest with you, there are so many data sets around these days that if you don't govern the data, there might be no privacy. You know, for example, a company I'm working with did a study in Columbus. We were given anonymized cell phone data about where people are, and you can figure out if the cell phone dwells for 8 hours, it might be a hotel or a residence. We get this anonymized data, we immediately go look up the census and we find out who lives at the address. So now we've de-anonymized the data. You can do that with multiple data sets. So data governance, can't stress it enough, is absolutely crucial. As my grandmother used to say to me, just because you can do it doesn't mean to say you should do it. My grandmother was a very wise lady, and the older I get, the wiser she gets as well. The other thing here is I'm trying to show a couple of things. One is you've got to get from data to information to insight to action. And if you don't get to action, you've wasted your time on the other investment. Sam Palmisano, who was the chairman of IBM in 2010, stood up in front of a really big meeting of intelligent transportation systems people and said, we make systems. There are 4 things we look for to prove that a system is a system, and you make your own judgment on transportation. Does it have clarity of purpose? Is it connected together? Can we figure out its status at any given time? And is it adaptable to changes in the environment? Transportation, maybe some parts, but not all. Anyway, I hope I've given you a flavour for smart cities and why mobility is important. By the way, electricity, 28% of our energy in the US goes into transportation systems, another reason why mobility is so important to us. Thank you for your time and attention.
My name is Jennifer Musselman, and I'm one of the folks working with the MPO on the long-range transportation plan. One of the things we did early on in this process is review the local government's comprehensive plans to identify some common themes that we can feed into the LRTP scenario planning process. So before each of the cities give their presentation, we'll go over a brief overview of some of those themes in the comprehensive plans, and they'll provide more details in their individual presentations. A common theme to most of the plans that we reviewed is using transportation to support the desired land use strategies for the areas. So for most jurisdictions, this means a focus on complete streets and providing options for how people get around. And we also saw that it often includes focusing development in the upland areas and trying to manage development in those coastal high hazard areas. Another theme we saw throughout the plans was a focus on affordable housing and locating that affordable housing near jobs, and also maintaining a level of service standards for vehicles to help manage congestion. A couple other themes we saw were providing quality rental units within the cities and maintaining those good grid networks. And we know these are not unique to the cities of Bradenton and Sarasota, just a couple of things we saw as we were looking through their plans. The city of Northport has specific language to help manage urban sprawl, and that they want to preserve the green belts around their villages. And then in Venice and Palmetto, while the challenges we listed here are different, managing mobility for aging populations and for farm workers, they point to similar solutions of making sure people have options in the way they get around and access to essential destinations. Thinking to the presentation you just heard from Bob, and comprehensive plans are starting to focus on technology to help manage congestion and transportation demand, and starting to look at new things like rideshare and electric vehicles, more focus on those. And also pushing for mobility plans to really assess the impact of development on our mobility options. And as we look to incorporate these themes into the LRTP, a key one is accessibility and access to that affordable housing. And this is not just in our cities, but in our rural areas as well, making sure workforces in rural areas have access to their jobs from where they live. Using technology to improve travel time reliability, one of the federal performance measures, and here we're really talking about incident management. So making sure we can identify incidents, clear them quickly, and alert drivers if there are detours. And then also focusing on reducing congestion, again, through technology options, through projects, and making sure people have options in the way they get around. So Ryan mentioned that the MPO has already started addressing some of these challenges through their congestion management process and their active traffic management systems plans. And you can find more information on those in some of the slides Ryan presented on page 8 in your booklet. So you can be referring to those throughout the presentations as well. So now each of the cities will give a more detailed overview of their current challenges and opportunities, and we'll go in order of population size. So we will start with Northport.
Good morning. My name is Nat Pitlier. My name is Jerry Traverso. I'm the Engineering Division Manager of City of Northport. I'm going to be doing the presentation. Can people in the back see me? You probably can hear me, but can you see me? That's not important. Just keep your eye on the slides. So, community issues that the City of Northport has, the hospital, for many occasions, the city have tried to get a hospital, and we need what is called a certificate of need. Last numbers show that the city is around the 70,000 in population. It will be interesting to see what the next year census will show. The data is we're processing an average of 20 to 50 new permits for construction, single-family homes. That's separate from what is going on in the West Villages. So a lot of activities is happening in the city. Affordable housing, our planning department tells us that the city has tentatively been selected for state funding to assist in the development of more affordable housing. They're waiting for the official notification to do a press release. They're looking also at the comprehensive plan to evaluate the policies on how can better incentivize developers to do more affordable housing. The development of Main Street options in activity centers. We have several activity centers throughout the city. We have new ones that are going to be coming, and they're planning on looking at changing the pattern book to be more conducive to a Main Street type development. Job creation, more industrial commercial development. Those of you who are familiar with the city of Northport, it's been thinking of like a bedroom community. A lot of people live there. It's very affordable, but most people work outside. So most people are traveling from Northport to other areas in the Sarasota-Manatee and even Charlotte County areas to work. And we're looking for the new Activity Center 6, which will be in the area of the Yorkshire Raintree area, to add more industrial commercials so people can live and work there. We want, like I said, we want more opportunities for people to live and work at the city, minimizing those trips along interstate so you can, at the end, it can also alleviate some of the congestion. Underage alcohol abuse. This was a curveball to me. I'm not a social worker, but I was a teenager, and I have a teenager daughter. And teenagers, when they don't have much to do, they come up with the craziest idea that you can imagine. I'll raise my hand, I was there. So we're looking at having more activities, more entertainment for the kids. The city's in the final phases of constructing an aquatic center. We're looking at doing more events for teenagers, and we currently have 2 centers, community centers, the Morgan and the Mullen. We're looking to do another one in the Atwater Park area. But all that is great, but focusing on transportation, if we build all these places and we don't get a way for teenagers to either bike or ride to these places, it will be useless, because sometimes parents work late, and the best way to do an intermodal plan, which we will talk a little bit later, so these kids can bike from school straight to the center, spend their time there, and then go back to home and to be with their families. I don't see that. Okay, key transportation issues from the city. Aging stormwater infrastructure and roadways. The city is relatively a young city. It's 60 years old, but unfortunately, all our infrastructure is exactly 60 years old, and in terms of infrastructure, that is very old. So we need to do a lot of drainage improvement and roadway improvement. Connectivity of networks. The city has multiple canals running north-south that have several connectivity between the roads. So we're going to be issuing a mobility connectivity study to look for potential bridge locations and connectivity between all these neighborhoods. The planning division is working to implement a mobility fee. So we're going away from impact fee. We're going to go the mobility fee route. We have a new grants writer position that will help us write grants for that, for grants for transportation. Like I said, a multimodal system hubs. We want to promote opportunity for multimodal transportation options, more park and rides. There's an opportunity to work with SCAT to do what is called a super stop. That is like a big hub that we can bring SCAT buses, and also maybe we can coordinate with Punta Gorda and the county to the south so they can bring their buses, and it could be like a transfer station for people. The east-west corridor development, as I said, the city has I-75, Price, Hillsborough Avenue, and Tropicare on the north, so we're lacking a lot of connectivity on the east-west connections, so that's what the mobility study will look for, opportunities to connect neighborhoods between those areas. Federal and state priorities, we're looking at a new interchange in the Yorkshire Raintree area. We will coordinate with FDOT, MPO, Charlotte County, to look for the ultimate location of that. That will help promote the industrial commercial development that I spoke in earlier slides. And also it will provide faster recovery in case of an accident happen. And last but not least, local priorities. We have the widening of Hillsborough Boulevard, 4-lane connection with Veterans Boulevard. Price Boulevard is our main east-west corridor, and connectivity between the neighborhoods, as I mentioned, for the neighborhoods. Sorry, I have one more. The last one, I promise. It will be to extend, in case of an emergency preparedness, if we extend Toledo Blade north to State Route 72, extend Raintree to connect to the 769, and extend Price Boulevard west to connect to River Road. That will provide a great evacuation plan for all in case of an emergency. As I mentioned before, the more park and rides, multimodal master plan, and also integrate the city trails with the proposed legacy trail that Sarasota County is currently planning. With that, we'll let, who's next? Thank you.
Right, good morning. My name is Steve Cover. I'm Planning Director for the City of Sarasota. And what we'd like to do is cover our major community issues in the City of Sarasota. Obviously one is transportation. We recognize that we just can't be operating by automotive traffic systems in our city, and so we are working on a transportation master plan, which will be completed in 16 to 18 months. It's called Sarasota in Motion. It's being led by our staff, Colleen McGew and Megan Louie, who are brand new transportation planners in our staff. In addition, affordable housing is a key issue in the city. And one of the things that people don't realize is the relationship between affordable housing and transportation. If you have to travel 20, 30 minutes to get to your job, do you really have the affordable housing that you need? Thirdly, the Bay. It's probably one of the biggest projects in the state of Florida. It's a 53-acre site, totally owned by the city. And it's going to be redeveloped into a major gathering place for the city. It'll be a park, a brand new performing arts facility, and a whole series of things, including also a open amphitheater that'll look out actually over the bay. And finally, growth and development. It's really interesting. We are really booming in the city of Sarasota. Right now, we have over $2 billion worth of projects in the review process in the city of Sarasota as it stands today. Key transportation issues. Obviously, these will all be addressed by our transportation master plan, but they're shifting to a multimodal transportation system. Right now, we're primarily by car and some service by SCAT, but we recognize we have to look at other alternatives. We want to expand our bicycle network and create greater connectivity. We want to create greater walkability within the city. We have some areas that it's not really friendly for pedestrians to circulate. Connecting to the Legacy Trail extension. This is one of the biggest projects in the state, and we are working on our connections in the city for that. We are looking into providing water taxi service. We have a feasibility study. It's going to be getting underway next month. Transit, not only are we looking to work with SCAT and other transit systems in the region, but we're also looking at microtransit in the city. Currently, we have a company called Gotcha that's providing some microtransit, but we want to expand on that. And obviously, address dealing with congestion, not only in terms of cars, but other forms of transportation. Have a much more reliable system that people can rely on, not only in terms of when they can be picked up, but where they can be dropped off, and also address the issues that we have with the barrier islands and the transportation issues they have coming across the bridge. And in terms of our federal and state road priorities, on Route 41, we right now have a whole series of roundabouts that are in different stages of construction. We have the 10th and 14th Street roundabouts, which are under construction right now and are looking to be completed next year. We also have the Boulevard of the Arts, which is right there where the Bay Project is located, Fruitville, and then also Gulfstream, which is the major roundabout being proposed where 41 Gulfstream meet very close to the bridge. In addition, we have the Coon Key Bridge Replacement Project. This is critical for us to be able to have different forms of transportation going over to the St. Armand's area and downtown. And then the Coon Key Mert, also a multimodal route that we think will be really beneficial, and the 301 Safety Project. Our local road priorities, Lemon Avenue Streetscape, which is a complete street project that we're really excited about. It'll be getting underway soon. Redesigning Fruitville Road so that we can accommodate car traffic, but also pedestrians. Myrtle Street enhancements, once again, same thing, to improve traffic and pedestrian circulation, taking a fresh look at Main Street and how we can improve that, providing connections to the Legacy Trail, sidewalk connectivity, and also a scenic Mert running along parallel to Route 41. And then finally, we adopted a climate adaptation plan, which we think is really going to be a game changer in the city of Sarasota, where from a transportation standpoint, it emphasizes complete streets, more forms of transit and microtransit, using intelligent transportation systems. One of the things we would be looking at is using like one card or app for use for all of our transportation systems. The resiliency, having the flexibility, looking into different ways of dealing with certain issues in the city, particularly from a weather standpoint. Curb space management, how will our curbs be used in the future? And then also different forms of cars. Obviously, electric cars are something that are coming on. We actually talked with a local car dealer who said by the year 2030, a third of all their sales will be electric vehicles. And so in conclusion, I'd like to thank you for our presentation and keep your eyes open for Sarasota in Motion, our transportation master plan, because we think it's going to be a real game changer in the city. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Carl Callahan. I'm the city administrator for the city of Bradenton, and we'll keep it pretty simple. We have one thing in mind that we're looking to really try to do. We want safe, efficient, and friendly transportation. We are the friendly city, and that's a key aspect for us, for all of our residents and our visitors, not just for our residents. The community issues, we are intending to build a world-class river walk, was currently under construction. Half has been done. The second half is planned for this next 2 years. Attracting new businesses. Bradenton's a very old town, relatively speaking, to this area. And we're looking forward to bringing in new businesses to change the way of life in the city of Bradenton. Attracting young talent, which is key for the lifeblood of all of us, to retain the talent that grows up, goes to school right here, and stays with us. Workforce housing, got to be able to supply a place for those folks to live. Absolutely imperative. Walkability and neighborhood revitalization, and obviously something that we hate talking about, but is reality, homelessness in our towns. Key transportation issues, demand management. Around our town, you can certainly see that when school is out and it's summer, transportation, didn't catch that, works pretty well. You can actually drive around town. But boy, when school's back in session and the snowbirds are here, it is unbelievable. High rate of pedestrian crashes. I think it's all tied in together. You can see what happens. We are a very old town. We do have the narrow old streets. We weren't planning for this type of transportation we have now, and the inevitable is pedestrian and vehicle crashes. We want to flow the grid, the things that are important. You know, the grid is in place. It will be in place. How do we make sure the timing and efficiency of that is as great as it can be? Because there will be limitations on what our opportunities will be for the future to grow our system, and increasing mobility overall. filling in sidewalk gaps, and adding multimodal infrastructure. The federal state highway initiatives, the 14th Street Tamiami corridor coming right up here was designed as a multimodal emphasis corridor and a scenic highway. Certainly doesn't look that way now, but that's the plan for the future. Permitted land uses on that particular road will be retail, restaurants, residentials, and hotels. Prohibited uses, drive-throughs, auto sales, auto repair, and gas stations. And when you look at it now, you see, what do you see? You see all the latter. And that's not something that we want for the long term. And then site design, our form-based code, which has been implemented now for 8 to 10 years, we look at no parking on the fronts of those streets, pedestrian orientation, street retrofits as redevelopment occurs. Redevelopment is difficult and takes a long time. We recognize that, but there's no reason not to start it. Local road priorities. We're doing a brand new streetscape, just started today. I noticed out in front of my office, there were barricades and people trying to figure out how to go. Well, that's what happens when we're getting ready to do new things. But a complete refresh of the old Main Street in our downtown area to give it a whole new look. We have a couple major corridors, the 6th Street East and 9th Street East. As all part of our new extended river walk, we're looking to create view corridors in those areas. Key access, how do you get down to the river from the Manatee Avenue or from some of our major roadways so you can get down to the river, because we know all the people want to be able to get there. The MLK and 9th Avenue Complete Street, both major east-west functions to take streets that were designed to move some traffic, certainly on the MLK, make it a more complete street, make it more favorable for pedestrians and bikers, and certainly on the east side, the 3rd Avenue connector, which will allow people to move from the east side of town into downtown without having to go out on Manatee Avenue. That's a key for us. And then citywide fill-in sidewalk gaps, prioritize areas that have ADA issues. The 2045 focus is consistent with the Vision Zero. We all know in this area what the conditions are associated with our dangerous highways. And that some of the statistics here we don't need to go through, but they're horrible. Those things can't continue. What do we do to help to eliminate those issues? And then what we're doing at this point is, with the Vision Zero, it's a strategy to eliminate traffic fatalities and severe injuries on all of our roadways, not just some, all of our roadways. The city is in the process of adopting Vision Zero policies into its comprehensive plan, and certainly our Planning Community Development Director, Kathleen Hartley, will speak more about that, not today, but in the future, to all of us about what we're trying to do there. And then certainly our new urban concepts is developing, along with the Planning Department, a citywide mobility study, and recommend that our mobility fee be implemented in lieu of our impact fees so that funds can be used in a much greater way. So we thank you for your time and look forward to coming to visit us in the friendly city. And I did learn one thing today, that we are a smart city because we have a very smart council and mayor.
Presentation. This is Jeff Strum. Why don't you take that mic, Jeff? I'm the politician, Jeff's the planning director, so you're going to get a little politics of this too. I'm going to start it off. City manager, apologize for not being here along with Kathleen Whedon. We have a downtown $10 million project we're trying to finish up. Venice is a very small 90-year-old city. Over the past 9 years, we've been dealing with a lot of infrastructure things. We have a 3% on our water bill, which that generates about $12 million a year to replace all the wooden water lines, asbestos sewer lines, and so forth, and especially on the island there. That's going very well. We're in our 6th or 7th year of that. It's probably overall about a $100 million program. But I want to talk about first, and I'm going to let Jeff talk about our comp plan, the LDRs, where we're really going to be focusing on transportation and how the city's going to look in the future. As some of you know, John Nolan built the city many years ago, so we have the John Nolan plan on the island, which is on the Federal Registry, And then we have out there where I live on Lower Road, where there's going to be 8,000 new homes built in the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm going to speak about the northeast section of the city here. And I remind you that Venice is 90 years old, 23,000 residents right now. The northeast side has scheduled on Jeff's plan about 8,000 homes to build. I'm going to start with Knights Trail. Knights Trail, the end of it right now is a landfill. At the Knights Trail Lower Road intersection, we have 1,500 homes going in with Tuscana Isles. We have apartments going in on Lower Road there. I think it's about 300 units that are going in. Travel down to Knights Trail, you get to the gun range. Those of you that are shooters, the sheriff and so forth have a gun range back there. There's 1,000 homes going in next to that. That's being planned right now. And the good news that I'm hearing, thanks to my county partners here, is that I'm hearing that there is a project going on right now to extend Knights Trail, thank God, all the way up to Manatee County. I guess we'll be hearing about that in the future. That's good because it's scary because I live on Lower Road. At one time we had one way in and one way out, and we had 3 major accidents on the way out that you couldn't get out. The fire chief, don't worry, we'll send a helicopter. Oh yeah. So Knights Trail will have a way out once that gets done. Along with 681, now I hear there's a plan being put back in to bring 681 across the wetlands there and onto Knights Trail. That'd be nice for sanitation trucks and industrial park vehicles. Right now, they all exit Lower Road, which is really a residential exit. So that is going on between the county and the city. I mentioned the North Trail. On the south side of Lower Road, we have the hospital going in now. That's a $500 million operation, about 600 employees. We're giving them a quick, Jeff will explain that, a quick way to get through the building permit process and so forth there. But they're starting that. It'll be a very, very unique hospital, state-of-the-art, 120 beds. And the other thing they're going to do for us, and the county's working with them, is build us a Cat 5 storm shelter. I believe the county's already got some money set aside to help out, $3 million. Thank you, Al. As you know, we've had some troubles with a storm shelter. So anyway, they're taking care of that, working with the county. So have a really nice partnership there. 1 minute I've got here. Traffic is an unusual situation. I just got the counters to the main island data. And it's interesting when you look at data, okay, versus emotions, okay? If you listen to some of our people, it sounds like we got New York City traffic. But when I look at the 17 and 18 data going to the island, there's not that much difference. So it'll be very good for us to continue to get data. Lastly, I'm just going to report on bicycles. Bicycles, we started out, we were a very bicycle-friendly community, and we won a lot of awards, but as you know, recently we've had some bad fatalities, so that is an issue for Venice. I'm going to let Jeff finish it up with the LDRs.
Thank you, Councilman. I guess I get less than a minute now. My name is Jeff Strum. I'm the Development Services Director for the city. I think Councilman Daniels covered a lot of our main topics. The one thing I did want to talk about, or at least mention, haven't seen the details of it, but DOT is doing some context-sensitive design approaches. I'm very encouraged by that. I think that will work into our comprehensive plan and the approach to complete streets, so we're encouraged by that. Also, again, support for the county for the extension of Night Trail. That's going to be a significant project for us. There's a lot of the communities have mentioned a lot of the same things. Affordable housing is always going to be a challenge, and I think that's going to be not just a community challenge, not even a regional challenge. It's a statewide and national challenge that we need to work toward. The bicycle pedestrian, I think, has been mentioned several times, but not only the safety for that, the connectivity. We've continued to see some accidents. I had a fatality this last year for bicycle, and we see those users, those numbers continue to grow, so that's going to continue to be more of a challenge. And then the last item, because I've already got the stop sign up here, last item is on the intelligent transportation systems. The capacities, as everybody in this room really knows, is they're really at your intersections, and we need to continue to evaluate that. We can't continue to throw money at adding new lanes and adding new roadways. That gets much more expensive. So the intersections are where a lot of that key work needs to be done, getting those systems coordinated and automated as well. So appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to the MPO staff for putting this on to allow the cities to have their input into the long-range plan. One other topic, this development in the Northeast for the city of Venice, we're undertaking a little bit of a micro traffic analysis to do some modeling in that area to get ahead of what the impacts are going to be from all the paper trips that are going to be generated from a lot of development activity that's going through our process right now. And we hope to coordinate those findings with the MPO as we go through that process and hopefully get some of that incorporated into the LRTP as well. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alan Tusing. I'm the Director of Public Works. I am not Carla Owens. She was supposed to do this presentation. So let me see if I can get. So our first issues are our community issues. I'm not going to read the entire list, just talk a little bit about a few of them. We are working very hard to work on the pedestrian and bike trails. They're typically addressed in our parks master plans and through developments with the other planned developments within the city. Other recreational opportunities is that we're very eager to continue on the community pool at Lincoln Park and the dog park at Blackstone Park with Manatee County. They have been very instrumental and helpful with us on that. Our key transportation issues, again, I'm not going to read down the list. I'll just go through the things. Safety improvements, more specifically, we have some issues on the north sections of 8th Avenue. We have a long span where there are no traffic signals and it's hard for pedestrians to get across. We're working with DOT to provide those crossings, along with US 301 and Canal Road. We have more increased traffic out because of Detweilers and the Sanctuary Cove development. We also have a very dangerous intersection. It's an unsignalized intersection at 23rd Street north of Palmetto. We're working with DOT. One of the options we're coming up with is to relocate that intersection completely. Working on congestion management, along with the ones that I mentioned was the Green Bridge and the DeSoto congestion. Would like to thank DOT for the great work they did on the Green Bridge. It really has helped the city a lot. Currently, we have complete streets that DOT is working with the city on on 10th Avenue from Riverside Drive to 17th Street. That will make our old downtown Main Street a very walkable community. We're looking at trying to find alternative routes to the city when we do have congestion to try to move the traffic through the town a little bit easier. We want to continue to improve multimodal options through our trail network. And our infrastructure integrity and resiliency. We want to make it a very resilient community for all our grandchildren. Our federal and state priorities, we talked a little bit about 41 and 23rd, so won't repeat that one so much. Sorry. We are, as I stated, we are examining to relocate 23rd on 41, and of course the Canal Road and US 301. Our local road priorities are preserving existing grid. We have a very good grid system. It gives us a small town feel. Safety for all the users. Trails and bikeways. Infrastructure resiliency. We're working very hard to fill in sidewalk gaps throughout the city. Currently, we have a 21-block area that we're doing a neighborhood revitalization, which also is taking care of the sidewalks and fire protection, and including irrigation to our residents through our reclaimed water. Our 2025 focus, is to move forward, continue with the long-range plans, include safety, infrastructure resiliency, increase in transportation and transit opportunities, increasing recreational opportunities, additional complete street projects throughout the city, and creating more pedestrian-friendly and live-work city. Thank you.
We're just going to shift the focus here a little bit. Thank you. I really appreciate all the cities coming up and providing their input into this process. Just as a shift in, as we prepare for our next speaker, Sean Sullivan, the MPO also has two other major environmentally resiliency-related planning factors. We want to align and support the national goal of enhancing performance while protecting the environment. Most major federal projects undergo NEPA process, National Environmental Protection Act process, that look at the impacts of any kind of new road project on the environment and the existing natural environment. So we want to align all of our priorities with that, as well as look at the infrastructure condition of what we have out on the road today, whether it's bridges or roads or any of the built environment that's impacted by extreme weather acts or storms or sea level rise. Any of those things we are responsible for planning for. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean Sullivan, who is going to talk about their efforts at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council with 3 MPOs to the north of us as they look at building up their system to deal with extreme weather events and create a greater and more resilient system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Good morning. I see Councilman Patrick Rothfuss here. He's the Vice Chair of the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. I'd like to say good morning, Councilman. My name is Sean Sullivan. I represent the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. We are one of 10 regional planning councils in the state of Florida. Our region begins in the north in Citrus County and comes down to the south in Manatee County. It encompasses 5,000 square miles and is home to 3.6 million people. We have been engaged with 3 MPOs to the north, that is Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough, who were selected, project team was selected as one of 11 grantees throughout the country for a resiliency grant funded by the Federal Highway Administration, which was a competitive grant process. And we were asked by the MPO team to come in and help with GIS and storm surge modeling and conducting an economic impact analysis. So an overview, there is a project team from the 3 MPOs that meets regularly. A relationship to the LRTP, which is certainly a subject of discussion today, is regional vulnerability assessment of surface transportation assets focusing on inland flooding, which FHWA was incumbent upon stressing during the grant process, storm surge, and of course, sea level rise. Appropriate to talk about all of those on Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. MPOs, as was mentioned earlier, are required to adopt a new LRTP every 5 years of the 2045 planning horizon. The project is to address the FAST Act, which is the transportation authorization, the requirements for MPO long-range transportation planning, consider projects and strategies to improve the resilience and reliability of the transportation system, and stormwater mitigation, and then consultation with agencies and officials responsible for natural disaster risk reduction. So an overview of the project would be that we use the NOAA sea level rise for 2045 as a component, storm surge modeling that we have developed in our office, excuse me, stepping ahead a little bit, and increased precipitation, all feed into the transportation network 2040 plus. We then conduct an econometric analysis and develop adaptation and mitigation strategies. So the work plan. The work plan really is comprised of 4 components: climate and weather, critical linkages, adaptation strategies, which is where we are now in the process, and then development in the summer of the fall of a final report. Now, there are modeling scenarios. That's where we are today. Modeling scenarios. We have the sea level rise, as I mentioned, storm surge, which are Cat 1, 3, and 5 hurricane events, a sea level rise plus surge, precipitation. Again, this is a 9-inch rain in 9 inches of rain in one day. The transportation would be the adopted network and socioeconomic data, and then econometric 2045. So the next couple of slides, I think, really play into a picture tells 1,000 words. So this is downtown Tampa today as we see it. The next slide is somewhat fascinating. This is downtown Tampa in 2045 with a Cat 3 storm surge and high sea level rise. It's really catastrophic, which is why the time is now to plan for the future. And this goes to show how important it is to conduct those plans. Now, system vulnerability for the 3 counties is listed in this particular graph. I hope you could see it. I know it's kind of small. Talks about impacted lane miles by scenario, and it's significant in all 3 counties. Pasco tends to have primarily inland flooding challenges to its transportation system, while Pinellas is clearly on the coast, and Hillsborough has a little bit of both. They have the Hillsborough River and then certainly inland flooding issues. So the project team ranked critical transportation facilities in the 3-county region, and 3 being the most high level of impact, 1 being the least, and you could see the project ranking on that particular slide. Next, we chose 6 specific projects throughout the region in Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco. Hillsborough have Gandy Boulevard from 4th Street to South Dale Mabry, and the Big Bend Road from US 41 to I-75. In Pinellas, of course, we have Gulf Boulevard from Bath Club Circle to 125th Avenue and the Stewart Causeway, Roosevelt Boulevard in Elmwood to Gandy, and then in Pasco, US 19 from State Road 54 to State Road 52, and then State Road 54 from US 19 to the Suncoast Parkway. So those are the 6 projects that we chose, that the team chose to take a look at and determine impact. The next slide is a little tricky to see, but it talks about transportation facilities and the vulnerability of those facilities, which again was a requirement of the FHWA in their grant process. So this map shows on the left, Cat 3 storm plus 2045 high sea level rise projection, and then transportation facilities with 9 inches of rain on the slide on the right. Next component was to conduct an econometric analysis. And to do that, we at the Regional Planning Council use a TransSite module of a REMI model, which is a Regional Economic Model, Inc. Model that we use. Again, the planning horizon year was 2045. Scenarios include 6 that I just went through: the Cat 3 storm, high sea level rise, along with 9 inches of inland precipitation. Economic impacts would be the gross domestic product and personal income. Next, we want to integrate the resiliency into LRTPs. And the graph you see is that's a graph courtesy of FHWA. So we are clearly using that and encouraging the MPOs to use that in their plans. So regional and per county representative projects, and then cost estimates, as Dave alluded to earlier, for planning projects. Next component would be to adapt, come up with an adaptation toolbox, and we've begun to do this with our partners at the MPOs. I won't read all of these, but these are all somewhat innovative and continue to be developed with our engineering friends. We're creating that toolbox, again, a key component of the grant process. Outreach is critically important, and those of you who serve or have served on an MPO know that the importance of public input is really critical to the success and the stressing of a successful transportation project. So to conduct this outreach, we have at the Regional Planning Council a One Bay Resilient Communities Work Group. It's comprised of staff primarily of the 6-county region. We have the Tampa Bay Management Area Leadership Group, which meets quarterly up in the Tampa Pinellas area, and Pasco as well. And they talk about the needs and the transportation priorities throughout the three-county region. We have MPO committees, as you all know, and MPOs. There are several committees on each of the three MPOs that we're also conducting outreach with. A critical factor, of course, is mitigation strategies for our LMS work groups, of which there are many. We've also been working with those folks. Hillsborough MPO has a policy committee, being the most populous county in our region. They have more committees, so to speak, than others, and we welcome that, and we think that's critical to the success of this project. And then the National Sustainability Summit just held in Tampa last week. So what are the next steps? We finalize adaptation strategies. We finalize the economic analyses, which we are in the process of doing now, and then projects for the LRTPs. And then we document all of this and provide that back to the committee made up of, again, the technical committee of the three MPOs. And then we'll present that sometime this summer, late summer, to FHWA. We think that this project will be a model for MPOs throughout the nation. We're proud that we're a partner, one of 11 in the country that has been chosen. We think we can be very successful. And if I could put in one plug for the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition, we're 14 months into our initiative. Transportation is a key component. We have 26 governments throughout Tampa Bay have signed on to a memorandum of understanding. There is no cost to any one government. We've recently, and I can announce that today, we've been awarded a $300,000 grant by EPA as of last week. We are excited about this initiative. We welcome you to join us. And if I can quote Commissioner Janet Long, she says, "Living in the Tampa Bay region, we truly live in paradise. But living in paradise comes with great responsibility." And we think becoming more resilient is a responsible thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. My name is Franco Saracino. I'm also part of the LRTP update team, working with the MPO to update the long-range transportation plan to the year 2045. Now that we've wrapped up the mainland cities, we're going to now move to the island cities of Longboat Key, Holmes Beach, Anna Maria Island, and Bradenton Beach. And I'm going to do a very brief overview of our review of the comprehensive plans for those four jurisdictions, and will be followed by individual presentations by representatives of those municipalities. So I'll start with some common themes. One of the common themes that we saw in all the beach plans, in fact, all of the plans throughout the region, was the recognition that dealing with mitigating the effects of natural disasters, sea level rise, what have you, is a key issue. And in the beach communities, one of the ways that that's handled or addressed is through land development regulations that recognize those vulnerabilities, that limit densities of development, that also limit public expenditure in those coastal high hazard areas. So that's sort of a series of mitigation strategies to deal with that. Other very common themes are a focus on multimodal and transit infrastructure in the island communities. Connecting the mainland to the islands, that's a key issue that I'm sure will be repeated time and again. Planning for hurricane evacuation, again, ensuring that there's adequate demand to get people off of the islands during natural disasters. Protection and preservation of natural resources. This is sort of one of the first lines of defense in terms of a mitigation strategy for natural disasters, as well as a general environmental issue that was prevalent in all of the island plans. And finally, maintaining a level of service standard for traffic on the roadways on the islands. So some other themes that aren't necessarily unique, but certainly stand out specific to some of the comp plans. For Anna Maria Island, a policy that the city shall not support or finance new local transportation corridors in coastal high hazard areas. Again, this is a mitigation strategy to limit the impacts of natural disasters. In Bradenton Beach, a discouragement of strip commercial development. I think this reflects the vision of the city and the feel of that particular community. Holmes Beach specifically addresses affordable housing. The other community plans address decent and safe housing, but Holmes Beach specifically calls out affordable housing, and I'll talk about that more in just a moment. And in the Longboat Key Comprehensive Plan to provide infrastructure to support peak season population. Okay, so this is kind of a push and pull regarding let's not invest too much in public infrastructure, recognizing the long-term impacts, but at the same time we have to address that demand, particularly in the peak season where we have a much higher population and a tourist-driven economy. I'm going to skip. Oh. Okay. In terms of how this all relates to the LRTP process, resiliency, as we've heard, is one of the key planning factors from the federal government, so we really need to focus in on that issue. There's really two ways to deal with resiliency in terms of natural disasters. One is mitigation, which has to do with limiting new development and increased densities in those coastal high hazard areas, things like that, encouraging multimodal transportation. But there's also an adaptation part to it, preparing our communities for those events that inevitably will occur. And some examples that are happening, our northern neighbor in Hillsborough County has recently implemented a solar-powered power system for traffic signals to make them resilient to power outages. A more extreme example in Miami Beach, where they're physically raising the roadways as an adaptation strategy. Another issue, access to affordable housing. This has been brought up by several folks. This is a land use and transportation issue. There are policies in all of the comp plans dealing with providing more affordable housing, but I think a more relevant way to handle it or to look at it from the standpoint of LRTP is to make sure that where the affordable housing is connected to blue-collar jobs, essential destinations, to make sure that we have that connectivity and the transportation infrastructure to make sure that people that live in affordable housing have access to opportunities. So I'll now hand off to Tom Harmer of Longboat Key.
Good morning. I'm Tom Harmer, the town manager for the town of Longboat Key. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of our thoughts this morning as part of this planning process. I wanted to mention before I get to the side, you heard the growth impacts and you listened to the mainland talk about some of the things going on. The city of Sarasota said they have $2 billion worth of construction downtown. We know similarly in Manatee County and the Cortez area, significant development plan. For Longboat Key and the Barrow Islands, that's a significant challenge for us. Number one, we don't control that, don't really have a direct say in that, but we're definitely impacted by that. The town of Longboat Key is a little bit unique, and you heard about land development regulations restricting density. Our town has a charter amendment that prohibits any increase in density without a vote of the public. And generally, our public's been very frugal with that, and I imagine will continue to be so. We have 2 points of ingress-egress, north and south. Both of them go outside of our area. One goes through the city of Sarasota and St. Armands to the mainland, and the other goes through Bradenton Beach, ultimately to Cortez and into Manatee County, meaning that we rely on other jurisdictions for our ingress and egress, seasonal, every day, also during hurricane evacuations, which means as you look at enhancing those areas, it requires those communities to be supportive in addition to the FDOT and the MPO. It's really important for us as we think about emergencies, being a coastal Barrow Island, that evacuation be a critical priority for everyone. And we also have this extra challenge of being in 2 counties, and many of you are aware of that, but as it relates to public transit, we have 2 different complete scenarios on the island. In Manatee County, MCAP provides an on-schedule reservation system 24 hours in advance where you call ahead. And in Sarasota County, we have the more traditional bus system, and they each provide about half of the service to the island. But it's 2 completely different types of service. Key transportation issues, we understand mobility. And we understand it's more than cars. We always ask, though, please make sure it's balanced and don't forget the cars because our residents do need a way to move around. Again, peak season can be a problem. It creates congestion. Those off-site improvements are outside of our control in most cases. There is a Barrow Island traffic study that's been underway for some time. There's 3 phases to that study. Phase 2 is now complete. The next meeting is tomorrow. We're active members of that Bear Island traffic study. Significant resources have been spent on the study, and there's some good recommendations in there that we're hoping can be implemented. I already mentioned the transportation issues. A couple of examples on the north end. We have the Bridge Street roundabout that we've had discussions with Bradenton Beach and with FDOT. We also have the Gulf Drive and Cortez intersection, and we've encouraged flex lanes on all bridges leaving the coastal islands. So during peak season and or evacuation periods, that can be factored in. On the south end, St. Armand Circle, US 41 Gulfstream, where roundabouts planned, and again, flex lanes on all bridge projects. We have one state road that runs down our spine. We're approximately 11 miles long. At our widest, we're about a half mile wide, but we do have some flooding conditions in a portion of the state road in that 4,000 to 5,500 block of what we call GMD, or Gulf of Mexico Drive. Federal and state priorities. We have Longboat Key, again, we have one state road that runs down our spine. The complete streets concept is one that we're very interested in and support, that context-sensitive design approach. Roundabouts, landscape medians, buffered bike lanes, multi-use trails. We really think that's important on the barrier island. Equally important, there are off-island roads that we also want to emphasize. When you look at in Sarasota, the John Ringling Parkway, the Boulevard Residence, the Gulf Drive, the planned roundabouts, in Cortez as well. Again, going back to the Bear Island traffic study, we really think it's critical that we follow that study and its recommendations. There are no real local road priorities that we'd bring up because we have one spine road that's a state road, and then everything else is really neighborhood roads. But I've already mentioned St. Armand Circle. You heard about Fruitville Road, which we have concerns about what happens there, and then Bridge Street. To finish up, the 2045 focus for the town, we'd ask that we focus on safety, functionality, and quality of life. You heard common themes. The Bear Island traffic study, a lot of resources, a lot of time, getting to the point of talking about implementation. We really think we need to look at that. A transit system that is consistent across the entire key, and we are opposed to lane reduction projects along primary roads that leave the Bear Islands and ingress and egress to the Bear Islands, and that we maintain all evacuation routes in optimal functional form. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lynn Burnett. I'm the city engineer for Holmes Beach and Bradenton Beach. Grown up and lived and worked and played on this island and have seen many, many changes. As most of you have, and it's already been discussed, a lot of the critical issues that we are facing is aging infrastructure. That's probably one of the biggest issues, honestly, for this barrier island, because it happens at a time where we have the severe climate events and sea level rise and an increase in visitors to the island, which then all culminates into a major bike safety issue, pedestrian safety issue, the lighting, because of the sensitivity with the turtles, we have to be sensitive to the light. But at the same time, at night during turtle season, that corridor is deadly. It is absolute pitch black, and people that walk across that corridor literally are taking their life in their own hands. Couple that with a rain event at the same time, and now you have the better part of all of the sidewalks and at least a third of each of the travel lanes that are also underwater. And so people will literally travel out into the center of the road to avoid walking through a foot of water. Through and coming into and out of S-curves, there's no way that you can see those folks. And so we certainly are suffering the consequences of that because of the ped safety issues that we've had. Storm surge vulnerability, obviously another community issue. And really just an overburden on the existing infrastructure due to the influx of tourism and the demand for people wanting to be on that island. And then you couple that with limited revenues. So you have a very limited amount of funds that these island cities have to be able to address these community issues. Key transportation issues, we've already discussed a lot of these across the board here. Congestion during peak season. I will say that when I graduated my senior year of high school from Manatee, my senior skip day, I waited an hour to get onto that island for my senior skip day. The difference is that was a couple of weeks out of the year. Now, there's maybe a month or two cumulative out of the whole year where you don't wait an hour to get onto that island. So it's the same type of delays, it's just the frequency and the inundation due to the popularity of the island. The lack of infrastructure to support the alternative modes of transportation is a huge one. And we're not in a position where we necessarily can or should build another bridge to the island. Yes, we connect Longboat Key, we connect up from Sarasota County to Manatee County, and you have 3 cities on that island that all flow through those same bridges. But you're not going to get 4 lanes on that island. So putting another bridge would do nothing. So what do? We have to reconstruct those corridors to accommodate the bicyclists, the pedestrians, the alternative modes, the smart cars, the jitneys, and find other ways to get them there. And water taxi is probably the most underutilized opportunity that we have that would be a huge focus. And so smart planning for 2045 would be to make sure that we do have good landing spots and really safe infrastructure once we get them there to get them from that landing spot to their point of destination, whether that be Bridge Street or the pier in Anna Maria, Pine Avenue, or downtown city center for Holmes Beach. The bridges, all of those bridges are on DOT's priority list, so funding becomes critical. That is our evacuation route. It's the only option when you have a severe event and high winds. You can't exactly put somebody in a boat to get them off that island when we have serious issues like that. So making sure that those bridges are up to date, that can handle the 2045 and beyond events that we would be experiencing safely for all of those users. Federal and state highway priorities, we only have 1 state road that goes through the heart of that island, so that is key. Replacing all of those signalized intersections with roundabouts would also help traffic flow. Also looking at some of the other local roads where we could implement roundabouts as well. Local road priorities, we can't add any more roads, so it's literally just a matter of enhancing what we already have and accommodating for those types of storm surge, sea level rise that we've talked about. So really 2045 focus, and I'm not going to read all of that. What I'm going to tell you is my goal, the goal for the island community leaders is that we still have an island that our kids and our grandkids can come to 50 years from now. And if we don't do something now, it'll be too late. So thank you.
I'm Lee Holt with the MPO. We got word that Mayor Murphy was not going to be able to be here today, but I will say that for the city of Anna Maria, Lynn did a great job of summarizing what the island issues are. Anna Maria does not have any state roads at all, so all of their issues are local, but they have all of the same vulnerability issues that Holmes Beach, Bradenton Beach, and Longboat Key are experiencing. And, you know, it's very hard to get to Anna Maria because you have to go through those other places to get there. So I just wanted to point that out and not leave anybody out. But I think Lynn did a great job of summarizing the island issues. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Corinne from the MPO, and when you think of transportation, it's usually thought of terms of roads and modes, and the MPO is responsible for thinking about transportation in terms of moving all people. We are mandated to increase accessibility and mobility options for all people, whether they're driving, walking, biking, taking the bus, or in a wheelchair. If you turn to page 20 in your workbook, you'll see some more information on our planning factor of equity and livability. So we must plan for everyone. The active transportation plan aims to connect people to their destinations across all modes. And so we plan for people to access their jobs, their education, medical appointments, and other life-sustaining activities, whether they drive cars or not. And so to speak more about equity and livability, please welcome Carolyn Griffin, United Way Suncoast Director of Strategic Impact.
Good Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about Alice. My name is Carolyn Griffin. I work with United Way Suncoast, and I'd like to talk to you about someone who is very near and dear to me, Alice. Does everyone know who Alice is? Show of hands. Yes? Wonderful. So I will be giving you an update then. Let me remind you that it started when some researchers thought about the federal poverty federal poverty guidelines. And we realized that we were using guidelines that were created in the 60s using 1950 data. Okay, what year is it? It's a little late, right? So it started with a researcher with Social Security Administration who reasoned that a family spent 1/3 of their income on food. And back in the day, that might have been correct. We know today it's about 1/8. So she said, okay, if they spend $100 on food, then for a meal, then 3 times a day, that's $300, and that was part of her calculation. She did not include the cost of living in a house, whether you're buying it or renting it. She didn't take in consideration eating out or going to a movie or health care. It was all about food. And so you may know that now some of the social programs base their guidelines or eligibility on a percentage of the FPL. Well, if you have 200% or 100% of something that's broken, it's still broken, yes? And so the United Way of Southern New Jersey came up with a different way of talking about how much it costs to live in a particular area. What does ALICE stand for? Come on. Very good, thank you. So who is Alice? Am I? Okay, I do have one? Okay, I'm using up my valuable time. So let's go back. So in Florida, 14% of Florida's population lives below the federal poverty line, and another 32% are Alice. So that means that is 46% of Floridians are not making enough to make ends meet. They are one paycheck away, one car disaster from perhaps even being homeless. So I know you're concerned about Florida, but let's talk about, we'll get a little bit more local. So how did United Way decide how much it costs to live in Florida? They considered housing costs, and we were very conservative. The housing is below average size and cost, including utilities. For child care, it's the cheapest legal form of child care. So they weren't really thinking about how can I have my child in a learning environment. It was really how can I keep my child safe while I'm at work. It was food, carefully purchased and prepared at home. So I don't know about you, but when I've worked all day for 5 days in a row, it's probably not likely I'm going to go home and cook. Transportation is the cost of a car, and it's paying for gas, insurance, and basic maintenance only. What's missing from that list? Car payment. Healthcare is basic out-of-pocket costs with no insurance premium. So Alice is deciding she's not going to use the Affordable Care Act because she can't afford it. She's just going to take the penalty. Now, I know right now the penalty does not, they've rescinded that, but when we did this research, the penalty was still in place. So she's deciding to take a penalty rather than make sure she has health insurance and various others. So what is the household survival budget? For Florida, for a single adult, it's $20,712. Okay, so what does that mean? Because I'm pretty sure everybody in here makes more than that, right? If you made minimum wage and it just went up to $8.46, you were making $17,597. So you know there's been lots of talk about raising minimum wage to $15, right? Sounds like a lot of money. Guess what your annual salary would be? $31,200. And if you are in a household with 2 adults, 1 infant, 1 preschooler, you need $55,164 to barely make it. That's not living large. That's not having vacations or going out to eat on a regular basis. That's keeping yourself housed and clothed. $55,104. So what is it like in Manatee County? In Manatee County, you need $58,536 to live if you are 2 adult, 1 infant, 1 preschooler. And how much do you think you need to pay for housing on a monthly basis? This Alice report assumes $974. The average cost in Manatee County for a 1,011 square foot home is $1,241. The average cost for a 3-bedroom house is $1,700. Is your jaw dropping? Let's look at Sarasota County. So in Sarasota County, you need an annual income of $62,040. So think about it. Housing, again, the estimate is $974. For child care is $1,300. Do you know how much that is a year? Come on. Yes. It's jaw-dropping. Now remember, the minimum wage is $17,597. So if I'm making minimum wage, I can't afford childcare. And we wonder why our children aren't reading on grade level in Manatee, Sarasota counties. If I had 20 minutes, I would draw that direct correlation for you. I'm going to skip these. I'm going to skip several because I want to be respectful of your time. So 2018 key takeaways. I think I've painted a pretty dark picture. The reality is we are better. Our communities are improving, but there's still much work to be done. The number of people who are in poverty has gotten smaller, but the number of people above Alice has gotten smaller. So even though you hear really rosy pictures about the rebirth of the economy and how well the stock market is doing, Alice hasn't seen those benefits. Systemic inequity continues to allow some groups to struggle more than others. Single-parent households, if they're under 25, if they are people of color, they all have fewer people above Alice than others. And so we've got our work to do. So I'm going to skip, since I only have a minute left, I'm going to skip to this slide. I want to talk about the dollars. Okay, I'm going to forget this slide. I'm just going to talk to you. So lest you think Alice is the other, she is lazy. Let me tell you who are Alice in our population. A registered nurse. Oh, by the way, she is a registered nurse, has a 4-year degree. She makes $59,322 in Sarasota. What do you need to live in Sarasota? Oh, it's about $60,000. How about a law enforcement officer? His starting is $51,777. You need about $60,000 to live in Sarasota. And so I want to just leave you with something. What can you do? So when you're planning transportation and when you're planning for resiliency, think about when you get a cold, Alice gets pneumonia. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. I'll flip through these. So now I want to kind of zoom out a bit and see how some of the counties are addressing these challenges that Carolyn and others have talked about today. And then again, we'll hear from each of them specifically afterwards. In reviewing the plans for the counties, they echo a lot of the themes that we're seeing from the cities and that you've been hearing today. So a focus on multimodal mobility and making transportation connections for all modes. Specifically related to land use, the counties are focused on infill development and redevelopment in the urban areas, partly in an effort to protect those rural communities. But they also recognize there's a balance in protecting the rural character and still providing the infrastructure to support that agriculture economy. Also themes of affordable housing, again, and I'll touch on that in another slide, and then directing the development in more of the upland areas away from flood-prone zones. Looking at Manatee County, a lot of language in their plans about the port and supporting the port operations. And then in Sarasota County, a lot of focus on aging in place, which is a report that they put out a couple of years ago. And then getting to some of those equity themes, a lot of language on access to jobs and several strategies to help achieve this. Incentivizing transit-oriented development, so locating housing and essential services near transit, that urban infill and redevelopment, again, trying to get the jobs close to the housing, and encouraging non-auto options for folks that need them. When we think about the LRTP process, a lot of this will get brought in through performance-based planning, and we're already starting to see that in the comprehensive plans they're calling for, in particular, safety planning with the use of data, and also transit planning, trying to use data to support those decision-making processes. Accessibility will be another key theme going into the LRTP process, making sure that we have land use scenarios in our scenario planning activities that can model access to those essential services. And then connectivity, making those transportation connections, again, for all modes. So Corinne mentioned this a bit before we heard about the Alice report, but the MPO has already started addressing some of these challenges. So a couple of years ago, they did a multimodal accessibility analysis, modeling how folks can walk, bike, and take the bus to essential services and how well that is being done across the counties. And then also the active transportation plan. And in that, we'll be looking at improving the individual walk, bike, and bus networks and also the connections between them. So you can start to link trips, maybe ride your bike to the bus stop to get to where you need to go. So now we'll hear again from each of the counties, starting with Manatee County.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Clark Davis. I am Interim Deputy Director of Traffic Management for Manatee County Public Works. Looks like so this first slide shows the majority of the west part of Manatee County. It's focused on the area west of I-75 primarily at this point. This is this blue scattered diagram shows where residential structures of all types were or are that were constructed before 1990. And in 1990, Manatee County had a population of around 213,000 people. Flash forward to roughly today, and you can see how far Manatee County has expanded to the east. This isn't the entire extent of the county. This is just the area within what we call our future development area boundary. It's the portion of the county that we intend to serve with suburban and urban services, so potable water and wastewater systems primarily, but a lot of our transportation planning is focused in the same area. This creates an interesting dynamic where we've got an older part of the county, primarily west of the US 301 corridor and what we call Southwest Improvement District, or southwest part of the county. It grew up around the cities of Palmetto and Bradenton primarily, but then expanded mostly to the east, but some into northwest Bradenton and the Palmasola area. And that area is where we see the emerging need for additional infrastructure and services. So our community issues are a lot like what you've heard from other jurisdictions today. We have issues of residential mix and workforce housing. We have a lot of single-family housing in Manatee County. We see a need for more multifamily housing and housing that's accessible to young workers coming into our community, and those trained professionals you just heard about, the teachers and the law enforcement people, the skilled trades workers that need places that are affordable to live. We need a county that's more resilient to climate change and to severe weather events. This map is the surge zones for our county. This isn't necessarily all the area that's vulnerable to sea level rise, but those areas that are in red are the ones that are most vulnerable to storm surge, and so there will be some overlap or correlation between those two. We need to upgrade some of our facilities that are in the east part of the county. At first glance, these roads may look very similar, but the one outlined in yellow underneath is a 2-lane road. It's narrow, it's got open drainage, sidewalk on one side, a deep ditch on the other. Compared to its counterpart to the south, it's a 4-lane divided roadway with curbs, bike lanes, and sidewalks on both sides. Both lying in similar suburban areas, and so we're facing this challenge of upgrading our infrastructure to meet the needs as the east part of our county transitions. We need to focus more on economic development and employment centers. We're starting to see more development throughout the county, in the Ellington area and the Lakewood Ranch area, but more is needed. We are net exporters of daily work trips, so a lot of people stay here to work, a lot come in every day, but more leave than come in, and so we're looking for opportunities to provide more employment in the community. So we have supporting initiatives for that. We've got what we call our Southwest Improvement District that I mentioned a moment ago. It's aimed at revitalizing and encouraging redevelopment and infill in the southwest part of the county. Our Northwest County Plan, which is more port-focused, and our countywide wastewater and potable water planning, just our plant capacity and our distribution and collection lines for those systems. Key transportation issues, you've seen a couple of slides. The red lines on the reliability map for the county were these crossings right between the city of Palmetto and Bradenton. Need to focus on our intersections, our ETMS and ITS systems, and regional trails. Federal and state priorities overlap with that. We need to focus on DeSoto Bridge replacement, Manatee County river crossings, completing the 15th Street East Corridor, looking potentially at a North County interchange. This is in the Buckeye and Hillsborough County line area. Local priorities focus on connectivity. In that eastern part of the county, we have seeing more suburban development. You can be very close to destinations. This is showing a residential community that's across the street from a school, but you've got to walk 2 miles to get to a school that's less than 500 feet away. Upgrading our intersections. The people that do aerial photography always manage to catch our intersections with no cars at them, but I can assure you that we've got issues here, and we've got a lot of examples like this where we need to upgrade our intersections. Continue working on our roads that we've already got underway. Those include Moccasin Wallow in the upper left, Fort Hammer Road to its right, and 44th Avenue in South County. For transit plans, our transit plan is focused on that same corridor area for now. We need to think about how we might expand our services, whether that's to extend it or to enhance it in areas where we've already got it, and to take care of our transfer facilities. Continue upgrading our supporting infrastructure for it. We've got room to expand as our system grows at our existing fleet facility, but we do need to think about fleet replacement and leveraging technology in our transit system as we move forward. And then finally, our 2045 focus, to kind of wrap all of that up, we want performance-based multimodal systems of transportation infrastructure and services. So it's a lot of the things you're hearing about with the MPO today, performance-driven, safety, accessibility, connectivity, all of those things, and continue working on our projects we've already got in process as we reach towards the next steps. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Spencer Anderson. I'm the Sarasota County Public Works Director and County Engineer. Thank you for your time this morning and letting us talk about our initiatives in Sarasota County. Our 2045 focus is, that's the wrong way. Let's see. This button. There we go. Is that right? Okay, there we go. Someone corrected it for me. Our community issues are really based on our annual citizen survey. If you see the first 4 items, 3 of those are development, transportation, and economy. It's really a 3-legged stool. If one of those suffers, the other 2 will equally suffer. So we are really responsible for making sure the development and the economy of Sarasota County relies on a well-established transportation system that keeps up with the speed of the other 2. The rest of the community issues are outlined there, but consistently you see traffic and transportation as a high community issue in the top 3 typically for our citizens. Our key transportation issues, typically the planning and funding of our capital projects is terribly significant. We're really struggling a bit with those right now as our funding sources are challenged. We have gas taxes and the taxes we depend on from our fuel sales. Those are declining. They've been fixed with since 2000 at the state. They've been fixed and they have not been increased for inflation. So we have to depend on other sources of funding within the county, such as our voter-approved surtax. That is started in 2009 for our surtax 3. It ends in 2024. And that will be coming back up for a re-referendum for the county citizens in 2021 or 2022. So we're looking forward to our advertisement of that, and hopefully the citizens of Sarasota County will support that again. Our transportation to and off Bear Islands is a hot spot right now for our county. We do see that if you've been out during season, during school, you'll see there's a significant amount of traffic on and off our Bear Islands, primarily Siesta Key and the Keys to the south. We are looking at a study similar to what was done for Lido Key and the Keys to the north. We're working with the MPO to initiate that study so we can come up with constructive solutions for that. Our federal and state road priorities, our first is River Road. On that list, River Road from US 41 to Interstate 75. We're working with the DOT right now on a road transfer agreement, which that will involve is the county transferring River Road from that portion to the state and widening that road from US 41 to 75 to 6 and 4 lanes, from 2 lanes what it is today. The county will then take over SR 758 on Siesta Key. That's west of 41, from Stickney Point Road all the way up to Bee Ridge Road, where it comes back, has many name changes, but it's that state road all the way on the key, on Siesta Key. So we're working with the state very closely on a weekly basis, pretty much, to get that finalized and come to the final terms so we can start construction on River Road in 2021. The next item on that list is the full modification of the intersection at State Road 681 and Interstate 75. That will be a significant development to open up that limited interchange right now to the east so that we can prepare for the coming development that's happening east of the interstate. That will then create a parallel facility to Interstate 75 that could relieve traffic on 75 if you were to take that exit on 681 going north, which would be the southerly extension of Lorraine Road. That would lead you all the way to US 301 into Manatee County. So that long-range planning for an alternative to the interstate east of I-75 is significant for the residents of Sarasota County. Our local road priorities, the Legacy Trail, which was approved by voters the last election, a $65 million project to widen and extend the Legacy Trail 8 miles into downtown Sarasota. And then we have several road gap or lane gap projects in the county that we're looking to design over the next few years. Lorraine Road from Palmer up to Fruitville Road that will connect the road that I just mentioned. And Proctor Road is 2 lanes and a small portion between Honore and McIntosh. We're going to widen that out. And also Honore Avenue north of Fruitville is 2 lanes to University. We're going to start with a portion from Fruitville to 17th Street. Our public transit system just went through a process to evaluate a change from a public-run organization to a private-run organization. Currently, the County Commission will direct it as continue to be a public organization. Lastly, our 2045 focus. We see a pending disruption in the transportation system with the onset of autonomous and connected vehicles. We're trying to plan for that and align our funding sources and our infrastructure to meet that upcoming need. Thank you.
Good morning. I'll Marie Corrales, MPO staff. When you turn to page 24 of your workbook, you will find an overview of the Economic Development, Tourism, and Freight LRTP focus area. Back in January at the Southwest Florida 2045 TransForum, Alice Ancona from the Florida Chamber of Commerce presented on Florida's economic and population growth, as well as Florida's top global partners. So you can find these slides on your workbook. Next up. Safety is the most important focus area. One of the MPO's objectives is to reduce traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries. As you can see on the slide, Florida ranks 3rd in high traffic-related fatalities. If you take a look at this graph, the Sarasota-Manatee region's pedestrian fatalities were approximately 25% of the total traffic-related fatalities, while bicycle fatalities were almost 3% from 2016 to 2017. Note that the green arrows show decrease and red are increase in percentages. So Florida also has the same trends as our region. Here, if you turn to page 30 of your workbook, you will find a map with the top 20 high-priority crash locations in Sarasota-Manatee. The MPO worked closely with FDOT and local partners to assess and address the safety issues at these locations, and individual reports are available on our website. The top 10 US 41 high priority. The MPO will be kickstarting the US 41 gap and safety analysis, where past and current projects will be analyzed to find the missing gaps, as well as taking a look at 10 high priority crash locations along the corridor. You can find this map on page 32 of your workbook. Now, the following video was used as a Vision Zero campaign in Victoria, Australia.
In 2016, 291 people died on our roads. What do you think would be a more acceptable number?
Acceptable? 70 maybe? Probably 70.
Can you send 70? Actually, this is what 70 people looks like.
Family.
So now, what do you think would be a more acceptable number?
0. 0.
We have to make choices, and we have many of them. to make and limited resources. I'm actually pretty shocked that not every single presentation said there's not enough money to do everything we need to do, because that is always an issue. And I think probably it wasn't in the presentations because we just all know it. But for those of you who are new to transportation planning and with us for the first time, that is always an issue. There is not enough resources to do all the things that you heard today. We have to make choices, and we have to set priorities among all the things that we heard today. What is it that we must do first and second, and what do we not get to do? I want to give you an overview of what's going to happen next. We're going to take all of the information that you heard today, and we'll be compiling a report that will be available in, we'll do a quick summary at our May meeting for our board, and then we will have a detailed summary available in September. We will also be building scenarios based on all the information that we gathered today and that we heard today and that we will hear from you before you leave today. We will be building scenarios for what our world might look like in 2045. Because if we keep doing what we've always done, we will get what we've always gotten. And so now with the new things that we have to consider, resiliency of our infrastructure with storm surge and things like that, that's a new focus. Tourism is so important to our economy, but all those tourists need to get somewhere. And that's hard on our infrastructure. And then we have to think about, clearly we always have to think about safety. So if you look at the back 2 pages of your workbook, where it says your transportation investment, you have a summary of our focus areas that we touched on today and some topics that you heard about today, and maybe some others that we did not talk about. But these are sort of our emphasis areas that are in the law. We are federally mandated to do all of these things, believe it or not. Sometimes I add world peace because we're responsible for so much. But we must do all these things. So what we'd like you to do is you have a little half sheet of paper that's an evaluation form for today, where we're asking you to tell us your top 3 things that you heard today that are important. We'd ask that you fill that out when you're leaving, and we are going to ask you to exit through this door and turn in that evaluation form and your name tag, and if you do that, we're going to give you $100 in MPO bucks. You have 10 $10 bills. And out in the hallway are 7 posters, one for each of these emphasis areas that we'd like you to put your money in. This, let's vote with our resources. This is what we have to do. We have to decide how to spend our limited resources. So you have 7 options, you have 10 bills. Just like real money, if you tear it in half, it doesn't count. We need full-size bills, but you can write on the back of the bill. There's one line. So if there's something within that category that's very important to you, one particular thing within one of those categories, you can write that on the back of the bill. You can spend all $100 in one area. You can put all $100 on congestion, if that is your primary issue. Or you can put all $100 on transit, if that's what's important to you. It's up to you. It's your money. We want to hear from you, especially those of you who are not the transportation nerds who already have an opinion. This is a process where we want to hear from the community. What are your choices? So we ask that you fill out your evaluation form, turn that in as you go out with your name tag. Staff is back there at the door to collect those, and they will hand you your little packet of money. And for some of you who are at our table a lot and have specific ideas about transportation, you can maybe go through this really quickly. Some of you are going to need a little bit more time, and we absolutely encourage you to talk to each other, talk to the board members who sit at this table and will ultimately make these decisions. Talk to our staff if you have questions about things, because a lot of these words are transportation ease, and maybe doesn't look like English. So if there's something you don't understand, please feel free to ask. We sincerely appreciate all of the time that you have given us today. We appreciate the board listening and learning from our communities. We want to thank every jurisdiction for taking the time. We recognize that what they deal with on a day-to-day basis is gigantic, and cramming it into 5 minutes was really a challenge, and we appreciate everyone doing that. So we will adjourn, but we are only adjourning to our activity. Please continue the conversation. Please take time to tell us what's important to you. In September, if you put your address down or if you signed up online, you will get an invitation to our next event where you will help us choose which scenario we want for 2045. And now I'll turn it over to our commissioner, our chair, for some closing remarks.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Lee. I hope you all got something out of this. Please take part in the activity. But I really would like to hear a round of applause for the MPO staff, Lee, Dave, all the people that you see here. Every one of them spent a tremendous amount of time on this. I think it was worthwhile. I would vote to do it again. So let's hear with your applause whether it's worthwhile. With that, Lee is going to continue to direct you.
I have somebody over there giving me the evil eye because I forgot one thing. We have an advisory group. 2045 is a long ways off. Some of us won't be here, and I'm pretty sure some of us, you won't want us driving cars, me included. So we have an advisory group called TransForum 2045. If you are under the age of 45 years old and you would like to participate in that advisory group, please see one of our millennials at the door, and they will give you more information about joining that group. TransForum 2045. The reality is we need to have some younger voices. They will be our leaders in 2045, and they should be directing our future too. So we're inviting them to participate in that. Thank you all for coming. Please take time to vote. And we'll exit stage right.